Frank Little, and I'm a combat veteran from Vietnam, and this is the story of my military service. I graduated from Leeds High School in 1965 and enrolled in Jacksonville State College. I found out real quick that I was not cut out for college. However, I did enjoy the ROTC program, that's Reserve Officers Training Corps for you civilians. I dropped out of college and enlisted in the United States Army for 3 years. I was sworn in Montgomery, Alabama on July the 25th of 1966, put on a Greyhound bus and delivered to Fort Benning, Georgia for 2 weeks of processing, where we took tests, got a free haircut, shots, and were issued uniforms. After which I was put on another Greyhound bus and shipped to Fort Campbell, Kentucky for 2 more weeks of processing, after which I began an 8-week course in basic combat training. At the end of that course, I was put on another Greyhound bus and shipped to Fort Eustis, Virginia for a 13-week school on the UH-1 Huey helicopters. I was trained as a crew chief and door gunner for that helicopter. At the end of that training, I received orders for Vietnam. I returned home for a 28-day leave, after which I reported to Fort Dix, New Jersey for debarkation to Vietnam. I flew on a Pan American jet from there to San Francisco, from there to Guam, and from Guam to Bien Hoa, South Vietnam, where I was assigned to the 90th Replacement Battalion, the most gosh-awful place I have ever seen in my life. It was a huge compound with not one single blade of grass anywhere I could find on there. Nothing but red dirt. It was hot, and it smelled awful because of the primitive bathroom facilities for several hundred men. Thank goodness I was only there for about 2 days, after which I was assigned to the 281st Assault Helicopter Company, which was headquartered on the 5th Special Forces compound in Nha Trang, Vietnam, which is a coastal city about mid-country if you look at a map of Vietnam. Our mission was to fly in support of the 5th Special Forces, or the Green Berets. We flew all their special ops operations, and actually the 281st is credited with being the Army's very first Special Operations Helicopter Company. You hear a lot about on TV and now of special ops, but the 281st that I was in was the very first special ops company. That tour of duty was 1 year. During that tour, I went down 3 different times in a helicopter. Once for engine failure because of ground fire, another time for engine failure because of mechanical problems, and a 3rd time for hydraulic failures. All 3 times I never had a scratch on me anywhere. I returned home after my 1-year tour of duty for a 28-day leave to a wonderful reunion with my family, but a not so wonderful reunion with the people of this country. And I won't speak about that anymore. After that 28-day leave, I was assigned to Hunter Armory Airfield in Savannah, Georgia for the 18 months of my enlistment. I had 18 months to go in the enlistment. We were training helicopter pilots there. I got out of the Army on July the 25th of 1969, after which I served 3 more years in the reserves. I am now a past president of the 281st Assault Helicopter Company, a group of veterans that meet once a year to renew old friendships and keep alive the memory of the 53 men we lost in Vietnam. I want everybody here to understand that freedom is not free, and there are no unwounded soldiers that have ever served in the military of our country. All the things that I've ever done in my life, with the exception of my family, the thing I am most proud of was serving this country as a United States soldier. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Sherry Cox. I'm a retired Air Force nurse colonel, and I have served 30 years in the Air Force. It's been a very exciting career. After my 30 years in the Air Force, we moved here to Leeds, my husband and I. He's also a veteran. He served 26 years as a pharmacist in the Air Force. And since Frank was from here, we decided to look at property here, and we've lived here now 9 years. A little bit about my military service. The 30 years, I really only planned on being in the military 3 years, and if anyone would have told me I was going to put a 0 behind that, I would have said there's absolutely no way. But what I found out was once I was in the military, I just really took to it. It felt like I really understood the vision, the mission. And being a nurse in the military, I was very, very fortunate that I was able to serve in 15 different hospitals. As I became more senior and moved up the ranks, I of course took on more responsibility, and I was a director of nursing at 5 different hospitals, both here in the United States and abroad. We were stationed in Italy and in Germany. Some of my most purposeful work during my 30 years was definitely my work at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany. And Landstuhl that name may be familiar to you, because that is where all our war wounded would be flown. Within 12 hours of being injured in the battlefield, our patients would show up at Landstuhl, and we would just take excellent care of the patients. It was purposeful work, it was very hard work, and those years I will always, always look back on very, very fondly. I felt that it was an honor to take care of the war wounded. After Landstuhl, I served as a commander up in Alaska, and then finished my 30 years in Washington, D.C. I had critical care nurses at Bethesda, Walter Reed, and at Andrews. And again, being able to be directly involved with the war wounded was really the pinnacle of my career, of my 30 years. Upon retiring for the Air Force and moving to Leeds, I still felt like I wanted to serve. So I began my work at the Birmingham VA. And for the last several years, I've been helping veterans get off of opioids, helping them see that that wasn't the type of life they wanted to lead. And through their own personal motivation, we worked together as a team to help them come off opioids. And 2 weeks ago, I did actually formally retire from the VA. So now everyone asks me, what am I going to do? And I think I'm going to let God just really show me what direction He wants me to go in. And I do know I have a wonderful church home here at Leeds First Baptist, and I feel very fortunate in being able to have a church family upon my retirement. You know, for 30 years it was different churches everywhere, and now for the last 9 years we've been at Leeds First Baptist, and we really feel that we're at home here. A particular story that comes to mind, and one that I will never forget, is during my last assignment at Andrews Air Force Base in DC, my husband and I were out to dinner, and there was at the time, I didn't know he was a soldier, but he was sitting at a round table at this restaurant that we came into, and it was early, there was hardly anyone in the restaurant. And my husband and I walked by, and we just said, hello, and we proceeded to our table. A moment later, I noticed that the soldier was in a wheelchair, and that he did not have both his legs were gone and one arm was gone. With his one arm, he was cradling his newborn baby, and he was a patient at Bethesda, and his family was in town visiting, and he had recovered, and he was doing his rehab in DC. We got up to leave, and we walked by the soldier and his family and struck up a conversation. Still not too many people in the restaurant. And I said to the soldier, I said, thank you for your service. And my husband told the soldier, he said, well, my wife works here in the DC area at the Bethesda Hospital. And the soldier said, well, what does your wife do? Asked my husband. And my husband said, well, she's the chief nurse. She has the nurses at Bethesda. And The soldier he handed the baby to his wife, and with his one arm, he pushed himself away from the table, and with his one arm, he saluted me and said, "Ma'am, I just want to thank you for all the wonderful work that you and your nurses do at Bethesda." Well, you know, I had everything I could do to keep the tears from flowing, but both my husband and I just said, "No, thank you for your service." And big message here is freedom is not free. And I just feel so blessed that I was able to serve my 30 years in the military.
My name is Virgil Langford. I am a retired Army First Sergeant. I spent 20 years in the Army, and I started off my Army career in the Republic of Vietnam. First tour in Vietnam, I was with the 1st Air Cav. I was in charge of an infantry rifle squad. I was wounded, spent 10 months in the hospital, went back for a second tour where I was assigned to a Ranger unit. I have to tell you that I was lucky. Being wounded, a lot of my soldiers were killed. So I got to tell you, the price of freedom is not free. It does cost dearly, but I feel lucky. God was on my side, I lived. I was in a Ranger unit, which is about as tough as you can get over there. And we saw a lot of people come and go. We walked into an ambush with my rifle squad, and in one burst, it took out just about the whole rifle squad. I was shot twice, spent them 10 months in the hospital, the most miserable 10 months I ever spent in my life. The Army, I come to love the service. I found out it was more to the Army besides just Vietnam and the hard times. There was good times also. You had a little more control of your life. You grew up in a hurry. You learned to grow up faster than anybody in the world. And being responsible for 11 men, some of them were from every walk of life, every race, color, creed, and religion, you learn to get along with the world.
My name is Jim Fowler. I served in the Air Force for 4 years. Growing up, I always wanted to be either a cowboy or in the military. And so by the time I got into high school, I decided it had to be the military. And it had to be the Air Force because nobody else in my family, to my knowledge, had ever been in the Air Force. So I joined the Air Force, and after my 2 months of basic training at Lackland Air Force Base in Texas, I was assigned to Hamilton Air Force Base in California. That's 20 miles north of San Francisco. I was assigned to the law enforcement and security service at Hamilton. I served there for 2 years, and I volunteered to go to Germany. But instead of Germany, I was assigned to Osan Air Base in Korea. At Osan Air Base, I was assigned to security services, but I volunteered and was selected to join the K-9 Sentry Dog team. And after going to Japan for 2 weeks Sentry Dog training, back to Osan, I started my duty as a K-9 handler. As a K-9 handler, our primary mission at Osan was to keep out all intruders who were trying to get on the base to do harm to the aircraft. Our secondary mission as a K-9 handler was to try and keep all the locals, the local Koreans, from coming onto the base The mission, the primary mission of the canine dog itself, his job was to alert and protect us from all harm. And he was trained to attack on our command. In addition to doing security with the canine at Osan, 1 week out of every 3 months, we were also assigned to do duty as helping to transport canines to several bases in Vietnam and into the Philippines, Clark Air Force Base specifically. We would transport the canines to these bases, and we would pick up canines that needed retraining and transport them back to Japan for retraining. The hardest part about being a canine handler is you become so attached to the dogs that when your tour of duty is up, it's very hard to leave them behind. It's very hard to say goodbye because you become so attached to them because you spend so many hours working with them. But after 4 years, I decided to not re-enlist in the Air Force. Although I don't regret any of my time, I feel like it made me a better person. But I decided to not re-enlist after 4 years, and I got out with an honorable discharge.